the intensified strikes between the U.S. and Iran. Look, I think it's pretty obvious what happened here. I already talked about this extensively. I gave you my perspective on this. I'll just give you a quick update on it. It's still the same. It's now becoming increasingly clear, and more clear, that the MOU was bullshit, and it was just to allow some respite for the strategic reserves that were near critical levels. I believe it was like 1 to 4 weeks away from reaching critical levels where if you actually go below a certain red line in the strategic reserves, you have the capacity for those salt caverns where a lot of the oil remains to collapse. Okay? That still remains. That issue still remains, and it's going to come back again. Iran knows this. Okay? Iran obviously understands this reality, and that was what they were hedging their bets on. So Donald Trump came in, wanted to give the markets a moment to breathe, right? Released the sanctions on Iranian oil. They had already released the sanctions on Russian oil prior to this as well. And the oil reserves were not going to recover, but at least it would stabilize the market a little bit. It would make things a little bit easier, right? It would give America some level of leverage. On the Iranian side, they recognize this. They get a moment of respite, or they can go back to rebuilding their infrastructure. They can go back to rebuilding their munitions facilities that have taken a significant amount of damage. They can get Chinese shipping and Chinese components, so they can go back to like rebuilding their drones to re-up and rearm basically in that short period of time. And that's precisely what took place. So I think that the Iranian side is aware that the MOU was dead in the water. Maybe some of the reformists thought that there was an opportunity for a deal, but I think the IRGC was already, like the hardliners were already aware that this wasn't going to stick, right? Hold on. So for those of you who are wondering what I'm talking about with the salt caverns, okay? Underground salt cavern collapses threaten energy stockpiles like the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Cavern failures cause pressure drops, sinkholes, and potential aquifer contamination. Maintaining brine levels and internal pressure is critical to preserve the structural integrity of these vital petroleum and gas reserves. The U.S. stores its massive energy stockpile capable of holding up to 714 million barrels in hollowed-out salt caverns along the Gulf Coast. However, the technique of solution mining used to create these caverns leaves them susceptible to structural vulnerabilities over time. So if you go beyond a certain red line of oil inside of these salt caverns, you have too little pressure, and you could potentially have them collapse, which would destroy the rest of the oil, the oil stockpile, the strategic reserves that we have. Okay? The Department of Energy manages and monitors 4 major sites across Texas and Louisiana to ensure that these reserves remain structurally sound and mission ready. Truly the most Amerifat problem? I guess. For the record, they're capable of holding 715 million, but once you go below 150 million barrels of oil, okay, once you go below 150 million barrels of oil, the pressure drops to such a degree that those salt caverns could technically collapse. Okay? We need 150 million barrels of oil in the salt reserves that we never take out of those salt reserves, because if we do take them out, if we go beneath that level, then there is a likely scenario where these salt caverns collapse. Okay, do you understand? Here's what it looks like. I guess the Brian Mound Strategic Petroleum Reserve caverns in Texas. Okay. So the capacity is 580 million barrels and not 720. Yes. Well, it could also not collapse. So, I guess that's what it is. But yeah, here it is. Did anyone see that? Analytica Camilla says, did anyone see that piece by The Economist where they apologize for being wrong about oil prices? It's one of those rare, well, honestly, not that rare cases where not only were they not wrong, investors were/are just detached from reality. The Trump admin suckered the stock market with the laziest cycle of pump fakes I've ever seen. Every few days, they'd have an official go and tell Barack Ravid that we're making great headway on the whole ceasefire thing, and investors believe them every single time, even though Barack himself pointed out that he was just literally reporting on what they were saying, but it's quite obvious that they're trying to bullshit everybody. Meanwhile, the global oil market's neck snap from the war whiplash. The U.S. strategic petroleum reserves are basically empty. They can't dip below 150 million barrels without having the caves where the oil is stored collapse, and the White House started creating literal communist-style gas stations. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the White House creates communist-style gas stations, because the strategic reserves, if they diminish to that degree, it's over. Okay? You hit a hard limit. And that's where things get really fun. Once you hit a hard limit, and if you start seeing real structural integrity failures, okay, all of a sudden, you don't have any fucking oil. And when you run out of oil, when you run out of the strategic reserves in its entirety, or you start seeing structural collapse in these strategic reserves, the problem compounds far beyond not being able to receive, the problem compounds far beyond simply going to a gas station and seeing the prices, okay? The prices will obviously skyrocket where gas is readily available, but we're talking about the electrical grid. We're talking about the entire American, the American electrical grid potentially turning into the Cuban one, okay? So, here's the issue. And I covered this yesterday as well. Here's Eric Nuttall. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve is now 19 million barrels away from the estimated minimum operating levels. There very soon will no longer be a safety buffer to protect the world from the further losses out of the strait. Okay? When you reach 300 million, you're now reaching a red line where there's only 150 million to go until complete structural integrity failure. Okay? And every single day, it's getting worse. Every single day, the problem compounds on one another. Okay? This is the reason why Donald Trump tried to do a fake out with this MOU so that Iran could sell its oil on the market, and this would give confidence to the investors. This would give some confidence to the investors. It would offer a moment of respite so that the American oil reserves could stop burning as many barrels as they are. However, it simply pushes the problem later down the line. And the more you push this problem down the line, the more you push it in the direction of the midterms. So I don't even understand what Trump is trying to do, because the problem doesn't go away. If they were to now go back to war, waging war as we have, right? There is no guarantee that a military intervention is actually going to force the Iranian hand to bend to America's needs, to Israel's needs. Okay? And that's just our strategic reserves. I don't know what it looks like in Japan, for example, right? Because the massive stockpiles that Japan has they've also tapped into in order to make sure that there aren't critical shortages. Because again, I repeat this over and over again, the reason why oil is a global commodity is because it is perhaps the most important commodity for survival, for normal everyday existence. Everything runs on oil. Everything runs on oil and gas. And it has inelastic demand, right? You can artificially reduce demand, as some of these countries have, like the Philippines have artificially reduced demand. You can try to go back to different fossil fuels like coal, which Thailand did, right? But ultimately, you still need oil, okay? That's not true, Hasanabi, you fucking idiot, says COO of Antifa. America runs on Duncan. Okay, fair. While other countries don't run on Duncan, they run on oil, right? So that's the reason why the price is priced out globally. Because countries will do everything they can to get it, because in the absence of it, their grid fails. Okay? Every other country turns into Cuba. And there's also a lot of, spot traders. There's also a lot of shadow fleets all around the world that are operating. Some of the oil tankers that are doing regular trade also famously have, additional millions of barrels of oil that they're selling to make a quick buck on the side. This has also allowed the market to not be as volatile, because a lot of people understand that this is just how it goes, right? Having said that, there is a hard line. There's a hard limit that you reach. And once you reach that hard limit, everything collapses. It's no longer just a higher price at the gas pump, which will definitely happen, but it won't be, 50 cents or $1 more. It will be $10 more. You'll start seeing lines of cars at every gas station around the country. You'll start seeing rolling blackouts, for example. An artificial reduction in demand in a country like the United States of America will collapse the largest consumption engine on the planet. This will have tremendous impact on the global economy. Okay? 70s oil crisis tenfold. So, it's no longer just about Americans feeling shitty about paying extra money. We're now talking about complete collapse. So the reason why I'm bringing up all of this is because that's leverage that Iran has, right? If we know about this, then obviously the Iranian government knows about this as well. That's part of the reason why they can play hardball. Iran was able to, through blood and through sacrifice and through their drone production facilities, they were able to successfully gain tremendous leverage as they now control the Strait of Hormuz. The MOU, in the language that they interpreted, in the language that they used on the MOU, implied that they would open the Strait of Hormuz as long as all of the vessels that were transiting would transit through the Iranian side. But of course, there's the Omani coastline as well. Iran has allowed the Omani coastline to also operate. But America made a big show of force. They tried to get as many ships as possible through the Omani coastline, and Iran was fine with it for a little bit because they got respite from the American blockade, the secondary blockade that America had implemented, right? And so now it's I don't want to say a Mexican standoff. It's an Iranian standoff, basically. Okay? Iran's put a gun to the head of the global energy markets, and America has put a gun to the head of the same global energy markets. And it's now about who gets to buckle first. The new standoff. America, for some weird fucking reason, has decided that it's more beneficial to try to force Iran by bombing civilian infrastructure again and again and again. This didn't work in the last 130 days in Operation Epic Fury, Part 1. So there is no reason for this to work in Operation Epic Fury Part 2. Okay? Iran knows this. So inevitably, America is going to have to go back to the ceasefire table. America is going to have to go back unless they just collapse everything. And I don't think they're going to do that. Iran has all the cards. America could only escalate further and try to diminish Iranian strike capabilities. But as long as Iran can lob these drones at civilian ships that are transiting millions of barrels of oil through the Omani coastline, which is fairly easy to do, they can do this with their go-fast boats. They can do this with their drones. So they control the Strait of Hormuz. You just can't outperform the geographic limitations here. It's 21 miles wide. The only parts that ships can transit through are either the Omani coastline, hugging the Omani coastline, or hugging the Iranian coastline. They're not going to be able to get away with attriting the Iranian strike capabilities in the water, especially because Iranians already have additional cards that they haven't even deployed, like shutting down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait by utilizing the Houthis. So things could get far worse going forward. Meanwhile, the Americans have ironically diminished their missiles, their standoff munitions, because they couldn't establish air superiority over Iranian airspace. So they couldn't use their unguided and guided missiles that they could deploy over Iran and they have plenty of stockpile on their unguided and guided munitions that they could just drop. They could drop gravity bombs by flying their planes over the Iranian airspace. But every single time they've flown planes over the Iranian airspace, the Iranian air defenses and their loitering munitions kick in, and it's far too costly for the American war effort to risk more pilots, to risk more assets. Iranians keep blowing up their MQ-9 Reaper drones, which are, $30 million a pop. And Iranians have even been able to shoot down over the Strait of Hormuz helicopters. They've been able to shoot down an F-35. And we're running through our stockpile of standoff munitions that we've been deploying from these ships that are far away from the Iranian drones. And we've diminished our stockpile of interceptors. We've reduced our stockpile of peer and near-peer adversary standoff munitions that we always have to have in a manner not dissimilar to the strategic oil reserves that I was talking about. There's also a strategic reserve of stockpiled munitions that we have that we always need to keep in the tank for, God forbid, war against Russia or direct conflict against China. We've already diminished that. We've already destroyed those stockpiles. Those stockpiles are not coming back. It takes a very long time to rebuild Tomahawk missiles. Okay? It takes a long ass time. It requires a lot of effort. We're just not going to be able to get that back as fast as Iran can just build drones, as fast as Iran can build its ballistic munitions. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, what is this? You're just wrong here. There won't be. Japan's reserves have fallen from 400 barrels to 200 million. There's still months of supply. You're just wrong here. There won't be rolling blackouts in the U.S. There won't be gas lines. Gas prices will go up and there won't be blackouts. I don't know where people get this idea from. It's going to be Europe, Asia, South America that will suffer from this. U.S. will be fine. I think that's why Trump doesn't actually care about the impact. You think we still got more oil in the strategic reserves? Like, what happens when the strategic reserves go beyond the 300 million barrels of oil, go beyond the red line, and I guess this goes on for another month? U.S. electricity depends on natural gas, not oil. Fair, true, but you said there's no. You said that there's not going to be lines at the gas station. We still produce 13 million barrels of oil per day. This is in the 1973 oil crisis. We are a major exporter of oil and oil products. We will simply stop exporting. Fair. So you're saying your calculation is that America will stop exporting before it allows any sort of significant crisis to take place here. Okay. There's still, at the end of this, what you're describing is longer bandwidth. Okay. What you're describing is longer bandwidth. So it's not a month, but let's say we just stop exporting oil to Europe and in Asia, right? We're going to fuck our allies. Fine. Sure. That's a consideration, right? But in spite of that, we're still burning more than we are. We'll still inevitably burn more than we're generating, than we're refining. So ultimately, we're talking about fucking massive consequences in Europe and Asia. All of our allies are screaming bloody murder. Their grids are collapsing. Okay. Meanwhile, we are still burning more. So that means we have, okay, past the midterms, let's say. The 3-2-1 crack spread shows what's going on with gas and diesel prices. So gas prices skyrocket. Let's say we don't get to long lines of the gas station, oil crisis style. It's not 1973 any longer. Okay? Fine. Not in the short term, but certainly in the long term, because we're still using more oil than we're refining. So what do? Let's say we just burn the global economy, which is not going to happen anyway, because we're the United States of America. Our position as the hegemon means that we have to maintain global stability. This is part of the reason why Iran has tremendous leverage. Like, you can't just hand wave away rolling blackouts in Europe or major oil and gas crises in Europe and Asia as though we're far removed from the impact. Donald Trump's domestic considerations aside, there is a higher priority here, which is to maintain global stability. The entire global capitalist system is interconnected. We don't just shut down Japan or shut down the Philippines without receiving any sort of blowback or without receiving any sort of penalties for it. There are a shit ton of American companies that still rely on the Asian market. Okay? Like, there is no world in the post-World War II design, in the global capitalist design, where we do not get impacted and we don't see domestic issues when the Asian markets are experiencing rolling blackouts or can no longer produce certain goods, certain components that we need for American manufacturing. The United States is not independent of the global supply chain. It's perfectly dependent on the global supply chain. Do you think Trump understands any of this? Yes, I think he does. If he didn't understand any of this, he would not have done the MOU. So the MOU itself is a recognition of the fragile nature of the global supply chain. Okay? It's still 3 to 6 months before things get really dire, but yes, this is still kicking the can down the street. I think this will pressure Ukraine to surrender to Russia for oil supply. Yeah, this is not just about long lines at the gas station, by the way. This is also tremendous inflation, because a lot of the components and the parts that we need for manufacturing even products in the United States of America, whether it be car parts, whether it be plastic components that are necessary for little things that we use at the widget factory, are still coming from the Asian markets. And if they don't have oil, they can't produce that. And if they can't produce that, then we don't have these parts. So now all of a sudden, you have a massive spike in the cost of goods and regular commodities here in the United States of America. This is before we also talk about the diesel shortages, which you also mentioned here. When you don't have, you're an animal abuser, you don't deserve. Okay. When we talk about the diesel shortages, then you have problems with trucking. When you have problems with trucking, you now have a logistics issue in the United States of America as well as everywhere else. Okay? No diesel, no food, or rather shortages of food, because the transport is now the capacity to transport certain commodities is now diminished on U.S. soil as well. And when that happens, the price of food goes up. Anyway, let's take a look at what this UK guy is saying.
Iran, it was met with missiles targeting American bases in allied countries, including Kuwait, Jordan and Qatar. So is this a return to all-out war then, Michael?
I don't think so, Leah. I mean, both sides have gone quiet for the last 18 hours now, so there have been no other reciprocal strikes. So, it began with Iranian attacks on 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and then the Americans responded. The Iranians responded again with attacks on American bases, and the Americans have then hit a couple of 2 extensive raids on the coastline of Iran and 1 or 2 inland places as well. So both sides are trying to have the last word militarily, but both of them now have gone quiet for the time being. It might flare up again, but neither side, I think, want to go back to this all-out war because the Americans have got plenty of military hardware in the area. They've still got 2 carrier battle groups there. The Lincoln is still there, the Abraham Lincoln carrier. The George W. Bush is still there. And those carriers, with their carrier battle groups, are very powerful. They've got a Marine Expeditionary Unit. They've got an assault ship. The Boxer's still there. They've got plenty of stuff to carry on the air war, but to what purpose? And the Iranians, again, they've got about 70% of their missile forces available to them from what they started with. They could carry on attacking the countries in the Gulf, but to what purpose? Other than to raise the sense of loss to everyone. So both sides are more interested in carrying on negotiations, particularly the Iranians, because they know they can string out these negotiations well beyond the 60 days of the ceasefire's extension. And the Iranian calculation is that they can outlast America economically longer than America can last politically, because the Americans are getting closer and closer to the midterm elections. And the Iranians think they've won. They think the Americans will have to withdraw, and they are now, you can see in the things that they're putting out, they're articulating a new regional strategy where they'll have a lot of influence in southern Iraq. They'll have control of the Houthis in Yemen. That will give them control effectively. There you are, the Red Sea, the bottom of the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait there at the foot of the Red Sea. The Houthis can close that. They can close the Strait of Hormuz. They will have the enmity of Saudi Arabia to deal with, but they had that anyway. I mean, the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates are very hostile now. But they know that the Omanis have got more or less to go with them. Qatar has got to more or less lean towards them a bit more. Qatar is in a very difficult position. So they know that they still have influence over the other Gulf states. They could have a stranglehold over Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb.
Stop coming right now. Stop coming. Chatters, stop coming.
I'm going to come.
Stop.
Do not come.
I'm going to come.
Straight, and they're still committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. So from their point of view, they have a new era, a third Islamic revolution to develop.
And all the while then, Michael, what is the situation with the Strait of Hormuz? Is it open? Is it closed? What do we know?
So it's like Schrodinger's cat. It's both open and closed simultaneously. Well, the Strait of Hormuz is interesting because the argument is all about the route. Actually, let me get up and explain. Is all right? Let me explain this. So the route that shipping.
Oh my God. India Love couldn't believe a guy wouldn't give her his number. She even went back to ask if he had a girlfriend, but he said no. That's my homie.
That's cute. I like that.
Okay. My chat said you did that because you're not single. Is that the truth?
That's actually cute. Who's that?
Oh, he said he's single. What's up?
That's literally my homie. Oh my God. Oh my God. Not India Love, dude. The dude at H. Lorenzo. The dude at H. Lorenzo. That's our guy. That's our fucking guy. That's me and Will's boy. Oh my God. Here's a long-awaited legal Chapo Trap House crossover. Wait, what? Okay, sorry. I know, bro. Come on, it's wartime. I know. Look, man. At the Hasanabi broadcast, you get to see both sides. Okay, you get to see both sides of me. Inside of you, there are two wolves. Inside of me, there are two wolves as well. Both are gay, but one is a wolf that is serious and covering news and situation monitoring. The other gay wolf is not so serious and covering fun stuff. Okay, like our homie. Curving India Love at H. Lorenzo. So much so that it turns into a massive crisis. It's on mixtapes. The foremost authority on culture since 2011. My mixtapes with a Z. Both of the wolves are having sex with Mitch McConnell. Cat dance in the middle. And they are both very dumb. They just mentioned you at DreamCon. What did they say? Anyway. Mark said you dodged him? Wait, really? They said you were a bitch? Okay, shut up.
Normally takes is the Transport Separation Scheme, the TSS, and that is around about here, normally.
Okay.
And nobody can use that route because the Iranians say they've mined it, and they probably have. There do seem to be some mines in this area. And what the Iranians say is, OK, the strait is open if you come via Larak Island or near to Larak Island. So the shipping that they allow through the strait is taking a pretty northerly route to come out. And that means they can charge, and they're planning to exert charges. They call them marine service charges, which is a toll to you and me, but they're called marine service charges. And that's what they're going to exert in about...
Why aren't you at the basketball game? I don't know, dog. Look at what I'm doing right now. Okay. Why aren't you at DreamCon doing news from the floor? I don't know. Perhaps because I'm 34 years old, about to be 35. Perhaps Unc doesn't have his Euro step locked down. Perhaps Unc can't shoot threes no more. Perhaps Unc got injured severely and I can't fucking play basketball any longer. Okay? I'm an old ass bitch. I was already one of the oldest players at DreamCon every year. And I've only gotten older. The passage of time continues. These are not excuses. This is unfortunately the reality. Okay? I wish these were simply excuses. These are not excuses. This is reality. Okay? Unc does play hoop. I just can't play hoop at that level any longer. That's my point. Dude, I'm not kidding. I might even lose the fucking Jason the Ween right now. Okay? That's how bad things are. If you want to know how bad things are, if you want to understand how bad things are, I might literally lose a game of basketball to Jason the Ween, to nephew. Okay? That's how bad it is. I'm washed. I still think I could cook them, but there is no way that I could, for example, defeat any of the people that I played against in Jesser's competitions. Okay. And here's the reality: if LeGoat James can get swept by Oklahoma City, then I can get swept by Jason the Ween potentially. Well, probably not. I still maintain the position that I could cook his ass. Like, no matter what, I could destroy him. But you know, get that gender affirming TRT King. Yes, I will make my return to the basketball court when I start doing TRT again.
6 weeks' time. The Americans say, no, we have a route along the Omani coast that we've cleared. We've made sure it's safe, right?
Unc can't go to Texas anymore because he's afraid that he needs to check in with Jasmine Crockett is really funny. I will be going to Texas eventually. We're working on something right now.
Around the Musandam Peninsula, around the Hajar Mountains here, down towards Fujairah. And that route is where these ships were attacked in the week. So the Iranians are saying any ship using this route is
I still cook Maya. It's not even... I'll still cook Maya. That's not even a question. Don't even start with that. I'll cook Maya anytime. Not even a question.
not safe because it's not using our route. And that's how it began. And what's interesting is that normally there's 130-odd ships going backwards and forwards day after day in normal times. In the last few days, last week, there was about 30, 40 ships going in and out. Last couple of days, it's 20 or fewer. And none of them, over the last 2 days, none of them have used the American route. Those that have gone in and out have all used the northern route. And that's the difference. So at the moment, the Iranians have got control of what is coming in and out, what little is coming in and out.
Yeah, by the way, this is basically leverage that is more consequential than enriched nuclear grade enriched uranium. Okay? So of course they're not going to give it up. Why would they? They fought for it. They bled for it, and they won it. And they showed the world how easy it is. So as long as they still have drones, as long as they can still lob, underwater drones or the regular drones that they have, it's not something that they're going to give up. America understands this, by the way. What I can't comprehend is why America thinks that they can still wait this out. Why the United States of America thinks that they could just like bomb Iran into submission this time, when last time it didn't work and they had to do a MOU for a brief moment of respite.
From the Strait of Hormuz, nobody is using the American route.
Okay.
That's what it's about. So are they going to go to war over a route? No. But they might go to war or back to war over who has control of the Strait of Hormuz ultimately. And what the Iranians are saying is, like it or not, we will have control in the future. The Strait of Hormuz will never go back to the way it was.
Yeah, of course, this wasn't an issue before February.
Yep.
Great stuff, Professor Michael Clark there.
Well, New York City Mayor's office is under fire after Zoran Mamdani's International Affairs Commissioner reportedly made plans to meet with Iran's UN ambassador earlier this week. The timing could not have been worse. And the New York Post reporting this, the scheduled meeting would have unfolded after Iranian troops fired missiles at 2 commercial ships traversing the Strait of Hormuz. An action Monday in direct defiance of an interim peace agreement between the U.S. and Iran. Mayor Mamdani was asked about this at a news conference today. Watch.
That meeting did not take place. It will not take place. And I did not know about it until there was a press inquiry regarding it. And when it comes to the work of our commissioner and our International Affairs Office, it's to ensure that as we are a city of the world, that we are also there to meet with leaders from across the world. The focus is always on our city and our relationship. The commissioner recognized.
They're worried Zoran's going to cook up a better